Okay, so now that the weather is changing, I'm going to start making bread. I bought this starter on Amazon, real sourdough bread, and I'm going to try it. I've tried making it from scratch before, and my sourdough seemed to be ready after about a day or two, and that's not supposed to be common, so I wasn't sure if it was ready or not. So we're going to test this out and see how it works. So anyways, it comes with basically the starter and the instructions, and that's it. So the first thing we need to do is add a packet of the starter to 1 tablespoon flour and 1 tablespoon water in a quart-sized glass jar. I only have a 2 quart, so I'm just going to use that. If you have a 1 quart, it's probably better because you're going to have to be dumping it out. It'll be a lot easier if the jar wasn't as tall, but this is what I have, so this is what I'm going to use. So the first thing we need to do is we need to add the packet. Put the starter in there. And then we need 1 tablespoon of flour. And I'm just using an organic flour that I buy bulk. It's just an all-purpose regular flour. And 1 tablespoon of water. And it doesn't say hot water, cold water, or anything, so I'm just going to use warm water. And then you're supposed to stir it. Now, I typically make kefir throughout the year, and with kefir, it's the same process in which you cannot let any kind of metal touch it or it'll ruin the culture. So I'm using a rubber spatula to kind of stir it around. There's not much water in here. I don't know how this is really going to do much, but it just seems really pasty. Now that we have it mixed in, there's really not that much in there. You want to go ahead and cover it with a coffee filter. I'm using just a nice napkin. It's thick and soft. And we're going to just cover it with a rubber band like that. And then it says to leave it in a warm place for 12 to 24 hours. And then we need to repeat the process. So I will be back in 24 hours to show you the next step. Okay, let's see if I can get this today, which I can. But on to some more serious stuff. We are making sourdough bread. Yay! Not only sourdough bread, but SanFrancisco sourdough bread, which is even better. And we are on day 2. So it says on day 2 to add 2 tablespoons of flour and 2 tablespoons of water. Now, I'm going to use the purified water because it suggests doing that. But whatever you use, I'd stay consistent with that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this off. This smells like flour. Nothing really going on yet. And I am going to level off 2 tablespoons of flour. And then I am going to put 2 tablespoons of water. And now it says to stir vigorously. It should have the consistency of pancake batter, and you may need to add more flour or water. So, stir this. And hopefully I don't need to add more because that seems a little bit vague to me. And I like my pancakes a little bit runny, so I don't know. Maybe yours are thicker. But this is really thick and doughy to me. I don't know. That's what it looks like. But I'm just going to leave it. So, with that done, we are going to let it sit again for another 12 to 24 hours. I'm doing 24 hours just to try to stay consistent. I'm in Southern California, so the weather's never really that cold. It's supposed to be probably about 80 degrees. So I just store it in an area where I feel it's warmer, which is generally upstairs rather than downstairs. So I'm just going to cover it and let it sit again for another 24 hours, and we'll be back tomorrow. Hi, we're back, and it's day 3. So on day 3, we are going to add a 1/4 cup of flour and a 1/4 cup of purified water. The consistency doesn't look any different. It's still a pretty thick pancake batter looking. You can see it kind of moving around in there. It doesn't smell like beer, like I'm used to stuff like this smelling. So I'm gonna go ahead, and it's called feeding your starter. So we're gonna feed our starter with a 1/4 cup of flour and a 1/4 cup of water. And then remember, when you go to stir it, not to use anything metal. It can be stainless steel. Just stir this all in. It's been 24 hours too, by the way. So it says you can do 12 to 24 hours. I'm just trying to be consistent. And I'm actually mixing it up like I would a pancake batter and getting out any clumps that might be in there from the flour. And it is kind of drying up on the edges a little bit, so I'm trying to scrape some of that down too. So today it looks a little bit thicker than it did yesterday. Yesterday it seemed a little more runny, I guess. You can tell it's pretty thick, but not too thick. So tomorrow will be day 4. I think it takes 5 days before it's ready to be used. It says after 3 to 7 days, your starter will be bubbling regularly within a few hours of feeding. I haven't seen that, but I think it's something where it starts bubbling maybe a few hours after and then stops, and I haven't really paid attention to it a few hours after. So that's it. So we're good to go for another 24 hours, and we'll see you tomorrow. Remember, don't lick the spoon. Welcome back. We are on day 4, and it's time to add more to our starter. So this time we're going to do 1/2 a cup. We went from a 1/4 cup to 1/2 cup. 1/2 cup of flour. It still really smells the same. 2/4. So 1/2 cup of flour and 1/2 cup of bottled water. And then stir with a plastic or wooden spoon. Ooh, that's a lot better. And then just work through it, getting the clumps out. I have a feeling because it should be about 80 degrees. And it's been 80 degrees outside, but I'm not quite sure that it's been 80 degrees inside. Close to, but not quite. That it might take a little bit longer. But I am sticking to the 24 hours. It just may take an extra couple of days. Because really this is just feeding the cultures. And it may not be... I may be feeding it too much based on the temperature, possibly. It may not need quite as much, but we'll see. We'll just keep going with it the way the instructions tell us to, and see what happens. I think starting tomorrow, we'll probably be discarding as we go. Still smells mostly the same. There's a little bit of a beer smell to it, but that's it for tonight. We're going to take your coffee filter, napkin, and make sure you cover it back up before placing it in a warm area for another 24 hours. Okay, today is day 5 and it is Halloween. So happy Halloween, everybody. I am wearing my cool little leggings for the day, but tonight I'll switch into a costume. I'm going to be Pikachu this year because of all the Pokemon Go players. So if you're playing that, have fun tonight and be safe. So what we are going to do now is we are going to dump out at this point. We're going to be dumping out and adding from this point forward. So we are going to dump out a half a cup. You can dump out a quarter of a cup or a half a cup. It depends on how much starter you want to keep going. So I am going to pour in a half. And then I'm also going to give it a half of water and flour. So I'm going to start with the flour since I just fried that out. And before I dumped that out, I stirred it around a little bit. That way everything was mixed in well and I'm not just getting rid of. You notice mine had a little bit of liquid sitting on top. Yours may too. So I went ahead and stirred that in prior to dumping that out. Mine smells a little bit like beer at this point, which is perfectly normal, but it does mean that it's hungry. So we're basically feeding it by giving it the flour and the water. I'm guessing it's just eating the sugars from the flour, which is our carbohydrates. And I'm just working through the clumps. And when I do this, I don't know if you guys have noticed too, it's really quite bubbly. But from what I understand, it should look almost foamy. Like a nice layer of foam should be sitting on here if your starter is ready to rock and roll. And I mean roll as in sourdough roll. Okay, it's a corny joke, but whatever. Okay, we are almost done stirring this in. And then since today is Halloween and we will be going to a Halloween party tonight, I'm not sure that we're going to be able to get it done. We may have to get it done in the morning. But it says 12 to 24 hours, so as long as you stay within that window, you just want to make sure that it's not starving, because then you could completely deplete the cultures. They could die, but I doubt it's going to happen that quick, so I wouldn't be too concerned. Okay. So that's what it looks like. Still a little bit clumpy, but it's not the easiest to get these all out. And that's it. So we will be repeating that for 3 to 7 days, keeping an eye on the bubble, how bubbly it gets, because that's apparently the most important part. And so now we're just going to cover it up and come back again in 12 to 24 hours. Hi everybody, today is day 6. And after day 5, we waited a few hours and we checked on the starter. And we had a considerable amount of bubbles, which is a good thing. It's what you want to have happen. And so we took a few pictures so that you could see what it looks like. And here are the pictures. So for the next 2 days, we're just going to be discarding and adding. And from what I understand, after those 2 days, you can start making your sourdough bread. So let's get started. We're just gonna, I swirled it around to make sure it's well incorporated before discarding it. That way you're not discarding just the water that's sitting on top or what have you. So, okay, now I'm going to add the flour, which is a 1/2 cup. And the distilled bottled water. Also a 1/2 cup. And again, we're just going to stir this in and let it sit for 12 to 24 hours. We'll do that one more time, the same exact way that we're doing it today. And then we'll be ready to bake our bread. And so we will be back in 2 days to show you how to use the starter to make some bread. Thanks for watching. Keep an eye out for how to make the sourdough bread tutorial, and remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos.